The thing about being beautiful is that it's work. Real work. Not the kind Emmett does sitting behind spreadsheets all day, but the kind that requires investment maintenance vision. When we got married 4 years ago, he seemed to get that. The first 2 years were fine. He paid for what I needed without the constant whining about budgets and expenses. Then something shifted, like he forgot what he signed up for when he married me. Everything changed when I met Sienna at that boutique downtown. She was buying a $200 handbag like it was groceries. And when I complimented it, she just laughed and said her husband tells her to spend more, not less. That's when I realized I'd been accepting scraps. Sienna's husband works in venture capital, and he actually appreciates having a wife who looks the part. He understands that her beauty reflects on him, enhances his status, opens doors. That conversation was like a wake-up call. I started paying attention to what I actually needed to maintain myself properly. Bi-weekly facials aren't vanity. They're essential. The subtle lip filler, the perfect nails, the carefully curated wardrobe. These aren't luxuries when you're someone's wife. They're professional tools. When Emmett would see the credit card statements and start his lectures about being $2,000 over budget, I'd try to explain. You can't put a price on self-care. It's an investment in us. But he never got it. He'd sit there with his little spreadsheets acting like my beauty routine was some frivolous hobby instead of recognizing it for what it was, the foundation of our entire lifestyle. Did he think other men would look at him with respect if I let myself go? Did he want to be married to someone who shopped at discount stores and got her hair cut at chain salons? The breaking point came with our annual girls' trip. Last year, Sienna and I had done a spa weekend that cost $500, which I thought was reasonable. But this year, she wanted to do something special at Azure Cove Villas, and when she showed me the photos online, I knew we had to make it happen. The oceanfront suites were incredible. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private terraces, the kind of backdrop that would elevate my entire social media presence. I spent weeks planning the perfect content strategy for the trip. The aesthetic would be flawless. Sunrise yoga photos on the terrace, champagne shots by the infinity pool. Those candid getting ready videos that always performed well. Sienna was booking the junior suite, which meant I absolutely had to get the oceanfront. I couldn't be the one with the lesser room. Not when this was supposed to be my moment to show everyone what real luxury looked like. When the final invoice came in at $5,128.50, I felt a little flutter of anxiety, but I pushed it down. This was bigger than just a hotel room. This was networking, positioning, investment in my brand. The fact that it cost more than our mortgage was irrelevant. We weren't buying a house every month, but I was maintaining an image every single day. I found Emmett in his home office on Tuesday night, hunched over his computer, dealing with some shipping problem. He looked so small sitting there, so focused on his little logistical puzzles, while I was thinking about our bigger picture. I didn't knock. It was my house too. Babe, I need the card. The hotel balance is due tomorrow. He barely looked up from his screen. What's wrong with your authorized user card? Nothing's wrong with it. I just need to pay the hotel balance. I slid the invoice across his desk, watching his eyes scan the numbers. The way his typing stopped the little pause. I could practically see him calculating in his head like he always did. $5,000. His voice had that flat tone he got when he was trying not to react. It's for the 4-night oceanfront suite. Sienna's getting the junior suite, so obviously I need the better one. It photographs better, and the experience is completely different. He turned to face me fully then, and I could see him gearing up for another one of his budget speeches. Victoria, this is more than our mortgage payment. We can't afford this kind of expense. The frustration bubbled up immediately. Here we were again, him reducing everything to numbers on a spreadsheet instead of seeing the bigger picture. Stop being so practical about everything. This isn't just a hotel room. It's an experience. It's networking. Besides, Sienna's husband is covering her portion and her flights. You just have to handle the hotel. I sat on the edge of his desk, blocking his precious monitors. Maybe if I explained it in terms he could understand, he'd finally get it. Look, you pay for it because I'm the view. I have to be seen properly. Emmett, it's part of our arrangement. You get to be with me and I get to be maintained. That's how this works. Something shifted in his expression, but instead of the resistance I expected, he just smiled. You know what, Victoria? You're absolutely right. That is fair. The relief was immediate. Finally, he was understanding his role in our partnership. See, I knew you'd get it once you thought about it logically. Absolutely. The view needs proper maintenance. Don't worry about the invoice. I'll take care of everything. I kissed his forehead, already mentally planning my packing strategy. You're the best. I'm going to text Sienna right now. The next few days flew by in a blur of preparation. I spent hours curating the perfect wardrobe, 3 new swimsuits that would photograph beautifully against the ocean backdrop. Emmett was being unusually supportive, asking about my packing progress, reminding me about sunscreen. It felt like we were finally on the same page about priorities. Friday morning arrived with that electric excitement I always felt before a perfectly planned trip. My flight was at 8 and Emmett had an early meeting, so he dropped me off at 6. Standing at the curb with my designer luggage, I felt like everything was falling into place. Have the most incredible time, he said, kissing my cheek. You deserve every minute of it. I know I will. Don't wait up. We're going to be completely busy with activities. I grabbed my suitcase, already envisioning the content I'd create over the next 4 days. The flight was smooth, and I spent most of it editing photos and planning my posting schedule. By the time we landed, I was buzzing with anticipation. The resort shuttle was exactly as luxurious as I'd hoped, and pulling up to Azure Cove Villas felt like arriving at my natural habitat. But when I approached the front desk with my confirmation number, something went wrong immediately. The clerk frowned at her screen, typed, something, frowned again. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'm not showing an active reservation under this confirmation number. That's impossible. My husband just paid the balance this week. I pulled out my phone to show her the email confirmation, but she was already shaking her head. The reservation was canceled and we processed a full refund. The cancellation came in on Tuesday evening. The words didn't make sense. Tuesday evening? That was the same night I'd given Emmett the invoice. There has to be some mistake. Can you check again? Ma'am, I've checked multiple times. The reservation was canceled by the cardholder, and your card on file was declined when we attempted to process a new booking. The humiliation hit like a physical blow. Other guests were starting to stare, and I could feel my face burning. Sienna was already checked in and probably wondering where I was. I tried calling Emmett, but it went straight to voicemail. Then again, and again. Finally, around 9 that evening, he answered. I was sitting in the lobby, having borrowed money from Sienna for a standard room that cost $200 per night. Victoria, what's going on? What's going on? I'm stranded at Azure Cove because apparently you canceled my reservation. They're saying my card was declined. What did you do? His voice was completely calm, almost cheerful. I'm at a blackjack table watching a game. I reallocated the luxury view budget. Turns out a $5,000 view was outside my price range, so I opted for a different kind of view instead. Do you're where? Vegas. First class flight was lovely. Thanks for asking. My suite has an amazing soaking tub. I couldn't process what I was hearing. You stole my vacation money. You canceled my trip to take your own vacation. I didn't steal anything, Victoria. You presented me with a bill and told me to pay it because you're the view. That's not a partnership. That's a transaction, and I'm declining to participate. The rage was building, but I tried to keep my voice steady. Sienna had to put the standard room on her card. It's $1,200 a night. You owe her $4,800. He actually laughed. I owe Sienna because you two have champagne taste on my beer budget. No, that's your bill, Victoria. You wanted to be maintained. Go find someone else to maintain you. The line went dead. I immediately tried calling back, but the calls wouldn't go through. Then I got a text. Since you're charging $1,200 per night to your friend, I assumed you didn't need access to my card anymore. Have a great trip. I tried to use the card for dinner that night, but it was declined. He'd actually frozen my access to our account while I was stuck at an expensive resort with no way to pay for anything. The weekend became a nightmare of borrowing money from Sienna and making excuses about why I wasn't in the oceanfront suite I'd been posting about for weeks. By Sunday, I was ready to go home and have a real conversation about how his little stunt had humiliated both of us. But when I got to our apartment, it was dark, empty. He wasn't there, and something about the silence felt ominous. Then I saw his luggage by the door, not packed but unpacked. He'd beaten me home and left again. The apartment looked exactly the same, but it felt different, colder, like he'd already started pulling away from our life together. I called him over and over, but the calls went to voicemail. Finally, I started texting, "We need to talk about this like adults. You can't just disappear because you're upset. This is our home and our marriage." Nothing. Radio silence. The fury built slowly over the next few hours. He thought he could just humiliate me, abandon me at an expensive resort, and then give me the silent treatment. He thought he could manipulate me with financial control and emotional withdrawal. Two could play that game. I started in the living room, pulling cushions off the couch, throwing his stupid decorative pillows across the room. In the kitchen, I grabbed one of his precious wine bottles, some vintage thing he'd been saving for a special occasion, and sent it crashing against the backsplash. The red wine splattered everywhere, staining the white tile like blood. But none of it felt like enough. None of it captured the level of betrayal I felt. The way he'd systematically destroyed my weekend, my reputation, my sense of security in our marriage. I walked into his office, his precious sanctuary, filled with his work papers and organizational systems, and I saw it sitting in the corner like a monument to his misplaced priorities. The vintage pinball machine, that ridiculous tacky piece of junk that he'd spent months restoring when we were first married. He'd chosen working on that thing over spending time with me, claimed it was therapeutic and important to him. He'd refused to get rid of it even when I explained how it clashed with our decor, how it made the office look like a teenager's basement. I picked up one of his 10-pound dumbbells and felt its weight in my hands. The back glass of the pinball machine was painted with some cheesy 1980s artwork, a comet streaking across a star field. It was the ugliest thing in our entire apartment, and he treasured it more than he treasured me. The first impact sent cracks, spiderwebbing across the surface. The second shattered it completely, sending pieces of painted glass cascading to the floor. I kept hitting it until there was nothing left but fragments and the bare metal frame underneath. Standing there surrounded by the destruction, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. This was what he'd driven me to. This was what happened when you pushed someone too far, when you humiliated them and abandoned them and tried to control them financially. He'd created this situation, and now he'd have to live with the consequences. I went to stay with my mother that night, and by Tuesday there was a locksmith at the apartment changing all the locks. By Wednesday, I was being served with divorce papers and a restraining order. The legal documents made me sound like some kind of criminal, domestic vandalism, destruction of property, financial dissipation. They were twisting everything, making my justified anger look like abuse. The restraining order meant I couldn't go within 100 yards of the apartment, my own home, or contact Emmett directly. Everything had to go through lawyers now, which meant everything became expensive and formal and adversarial. His brother turned out to be some hotshot divorce attorney who was treating this like a personal crusade instead of a marital dispute between two people who'd lost their way. My mother kept asking what I'd done to push him to this point, as if his behavior was somehow my fault. Victoria, you must have done something. Men don't just file for divorce and restraining orders out of nowhere. But that was exactly what he'd done. He'd planned this whole thing, probably for months. The Vegas trip wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. He'd been documenting my spending building a case, waiting for the right moment to destroy our marriage and make me look like the bad guy. The first mediation session felt like walking into an ambush. Emmett sat there looking calm and reasonable, while his brother spread out months of credit card statements like evidence in a criminal trial. They were claiming I'd systematically abused our finances to the tune of $114,000 over 4 years. They made it sound like I'd been embezzling instead of maintaining the lifestyle that any reasonable wife would expect. Your client admitted that she views this marriage as a transactional arrangement where she provides aesthetic value in exchange for financial maintenance. His brother said, sliding papers across the table. That's not a marriage, it's a service contract, and my client is terminating the agreement. I tried to explain that I'd supported Emmett, that I'd managed our household and social obligations, that I'd given him the best years of my life. But they had an answer for everything. They had receipts and bank statements, and even a recording of me saying I was the view that needed to be maintained. The worst part was the pinball machine. They had photos of the damage, a police report, and a restoration estimate for $1.950. They were treating it like I'd destroyed some priceless artifact instead of a piece of junk that belonged in a garage sale. We're prepared to press criminal charges for the vandalism unless this mediation reaches a satisfactory resolution, his brother said. Your client will agree to no spousal support, no claim on the apartment, and responsibility for her own debts. In exchange, we won't pursue criminal prosecution or sue for the financial dissipation. I wanted to fight it, but my lawyer was already advising me to take the deal. The evidence is overwhelming, he whispered. They have documentation of everything, and the property damage gives them criminal leverage. This is the best offer you're going to get. So I signed. I signed away any claim to spousal support, to the apartment, to anything I'd helped build over 4 years of marriage. I walked away with nothing but my personal belongings and the crushing realization that I'd been completely outmaneuvered. 8 months later, I'm living in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, working retail, at a department store and watching my entire social circle pretend I don't exist. Sienna actually took me to small claims court over the hotel bill, claiming I'd manipulated her into covering my expenses. She won, of course, because I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight it. My mother reminds me daily that I threw away a good man and sabotaged a stable marriage. The credit card debt I accumulated during the marriage is entirely my responsibility now, and on my retail salary, the minimum payments are barely manageable. My social media following has dwindled to almost nothing because I can't afford to maintain the lifestyle that people followed me for in the first place. The hardest part is seeing Emmett around town sometimes. He looks genuinely content, like the stress of our marriage has lifted from his shoulders. He's got a new car he's clearly been working out, and he seems lighter somehow. Meanwhile, I'm working 60-hour weeks just to make ends meet and living like I'm like 21 again. I know what people think when they see me now. They think I got what I deserved, that I was greedy and materialistic and drove away a decent man with my demands. But they don't understand what it's like to have standards, to refuse to settle for less than you're worth. I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. I was asking to be treated like a priority instead of an expense. Maybe I made some mistakes. Maybe I could have communicated better, been more understanding about budgets and financial stress. But at the end of the day, he's the one who chose to humiliate me, abandon me, and destroy our marriage instead of working through our problems like adults. He's the one who turned a disagreement about money into a legal war that left me with nothing. I'm not bitter about it. I'm just realistic about how the world treats women who know their worth and aren't afraid to ask for it. Some men can handle being with someone who has standards and some men can't. Emmett couldn't. And now we're both living with the consequences of that incompatibility.